Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal and we are discussing deepfakes and ways and means of arresting and solving for this menace. Henry, before we went into a break, was talking about the accountability of the social media platforms. Jaspreet, jump in on this one. You've been part of a tech company. How possible is it, how feasible it is in Indian context?
Both the co-panelists are right. Just technology itself or just regulation itself is not necessary. It's not sufficient to stop or detect this menace. Actually, we need three things. We definitely need the regulation, both at a country level and perhaps at a global level. The second thing that we need is the technology as it gets better and better, hopefully, while it will not be the perfect answer. And the third very important thing that we need is education and awareness, where people who both are affected or could detect these deepfakes should be aware that certain images or videos or text is not necessarily the truth, and there needs to be education to figure out what is what. But the single most effective method would actually be to stop the spread of these deepfakes, which are created anywhere in the world. Anyone sitting anywhere can create a deepfake, and therefore to try and stop at that level is very difficult. But if we can try and manage to stop it at a social network level. Now, again, like all the other things, there cannot be a foolproof solution. It's very difficult to detect a deepfake 100% of the time. The amount of content loaded onto these social networks is of huge terabytes of data, and no network or platform can 100% detect it. Still, I think they can do a better job at this than what they're doing today.
Right.
Both from better tools and having more people and resources and more stricter policies under a regulation, which would help them do that.
All right. So having policies and executing them well, apart from the technology that is used to avert. But law plays a very important role here. Ma'am, what do you have to say about that and about the Henry's points on law and technology?
Yeah, very, very important points raised. And here, we can't have solutions for all problems, but we can keep trying. Now, this is where India has actually led, thanks to one matter, which was the suo motu case before the Supreme Court. So very briefly, and this is a remedy you can draw from in terms of how copyright content is protected online. So once you know that a deepfake exists, and as Henry rightly pointed out, since it's meant to defame and, for depravity, but also to defame the victims. Once you know about that content, that hash can be circulated and it can be blocked from future uploads. And there is crawler technology existing already, which can take down other uploads or sharing, which may have already been done prior to the identification of a deepfake also.
Yes.
So this gives a very powerful technology-enabled solution for victims, and this is something that's already been implemented through an order of the Supreme Court in Prajwala versus. So it's actually a suo motu case of Prajwala. But more importantly, today you have three legal solutions also. So you have the Prajwala order-enabled solutions, which is something which I just talked about. You also have the solutions under IPC and IT Act, which I mentioned. And just to add a couple of more provisions in that, you would want to look at 66C and D, which talks about identity and cheating by personation. And finally, you also have the intermediary guidelines of 2021, which possibly may go through some changes based on what the minister mentioned. So you already have a remedy for use of automated tools under that.
All right, so lots of remedies already available. Henry, your word on the global, solutions that are being worked on. European Union is working on it. Are the policies and the technological advancement all coming together and conjuring up a plan for solution?
I mean, it's obviously an unequal picture globally. Some countries and some regions or states within certain countries are doing better than others. An interesting piece of legislation, or at least draft legislation that's been proposed on Monday from Australia, for example, is doing some interesting work in terms of mandating tech companies to have kind of minimum levels of moderation and trust and safety capacity within their organizations, as well as taking measures such as in building in guardrails into early stage products, which still respect things such as end-to-end encryption and privacy. My attitude, and this is what I often will talk about when I'm advising governments on legislation, as I have in the UK, the EU, and the US in particular, it's this idea of almost a perverse customer journey. That is, if you're a bad actor looking to make a deepfake, what are the stages from you having that idea to it being shared widely online? And whether that's the tools that you're using, the platforms that are hosting those tools, such as open source websites or app stores, the internet service providers that are maybe pointing to certain websites, the social media platforms, of course. All of these stakeholders have a role to play in increasing the amount of friction that is involved in doing this. We are not going to be able to stop this from happening entirely. It's just not realistic. But what we can do is try and essentially get each of those different people who have a role to play to introduce measures to make it harder for people to access these tools, to deploy them in malicious contexts. And indeed, as Jaspreet raised, which I think is really important, is to educate people. Yes. A lot of people creating deepfake image abuse or pornography in particular don't see it as digital sexual assault, which it is. It is a sexual crime. Yes. And so I think helping society understand that this is not just a meme, this is not kind of any less harmful because it's not real. Yes. I think it's critical to changing public perception of these digital sexual crimes.
Yes, Henry, across the world, employers have been educating also all the employees on these new policies coming up to really safeguard the financial documents as well as from any phishing as well as deepfake to take place. Jaspreet, I have just 10 seconds. Is this also becoming a good business opportunity, and how are cybersecurity companies focused on this? Very quickly.
Yeah, these things which I sometimes call online acid attacks do have a silver lining. And the silver lining is that much like we had a whole innovation ecosystem come up in terms of the antivirus software for viruses, there's this opportunity for startups and large innovative companies to actually create these new technologies which can detect and prevent the spread of deepfakes. And I think we'll see that ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem, come up shortly.
All right, gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for very interesting points. And I'll just make one point that generative artificial intelligence is becoming such a hot topic where investors are really chasing companies for it. But AI ethics is also equally important, and that's the focus that is going to come up to the fore very quickly. Thank you so much, Henry, Jaspreet, as well as NS Nappinai, for joining in with all the views and perspective on this important subject. With that, it's a wrap on Big Deal. Thanks so much for tuning in.